Welcome back to Team Blush. Today we're going to be installing the GKTech coolant reservoir as well as changing the coolant in the 240 with Mishimoto's liquid chill. As you can see in the video right now, the original coolant reservoir that came with the 240 is cracking, plastic is brittle, and it has seen better days. So why don't we head over to the car and get to work. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to come under the front of the car and jack up the front of the car using the front cross member right here. And once you have it positioned under the cross member, just take your hand and snug it up under the cross member just like this. I think it's much easier to do it this way instead of messing around with the jack handle. Now that we have the car jacked up from the cross member, we're going to want to come underneath the car and take off the factory, I guess you would call it a skid plate, even though it's just a flimsy plastic. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, I'm missing mine, 4 fasteners on the front bumper, and you're going to have, looks like 1, 2, 3, again I'm missing mine. Looks like you're gonna have 3 fasteners on the actual plastic itself, so get to loosening those and take off this plastic liner. Now that we have the plastic underside of the 240 taken off, we can come under the front driver's side of the car, and as you can see right here, the radiator drain plug, we're going to take that off and let it drain into our... Alright, I loosened off the drain plug. Now it's time to see how nasty this coolant is in this 30-year-old car. And when you take off the drain plug, you're going to want to undo the reservoir cap to let it drain faster. There we go. Alright, once the coolant has finished draining for the most part from the radiator, you're going to want to put the drain plug that you took out back on. And you're just going to want to hand tighten this. You don't want to torque this down. It will strip those plastic threads just like that. And I got a little bit of the old coolant in this bottle just so you can see how nasty this is. It's a good thing we're changing it. It is pretty dark. Don't know how many miles are on that coolant, but it is in sorry shape. Alright, here's the exciting part. We're going to be changing out this coolant reservoir that has been held together with aluminum tape over the years. You can see, huge hole. I actually haven't had this aluminum tape off ever since I bought the car, but this plastic has just gone brittle over the years and needs to be replaced. So we are going to replace it with this factory style coolant reservoir from GKTech. Super cheap. I don't know how they can offer it for such a cheap price, but I bought this myself and we're going to change it out. It's going to look much better. Alright, so first off, we're going to remove the hose that goes from the coolant reservoir all the way through the engine up here to the radiator. And once you get that hose off, there's going to be 2 fasteners. One right down here, it's a 10 millimeter, and there's one on the back side just behind where this hose goes. So you can see just barely right back here. So let's get those removed. Alright, we got those bolts out. Time to say goodbye and say hello to the brand new coolant reservoir. Oh, it looks so much better already, and it isn't even installed. Just install the coolant reservoir in the reverse order of how you took the old one out. Just like that. 2 bolts and a hose, and the engine bay is looking so much better with the new centerpiece of the GKTech coolant reservoir. Let's finish up flushing this radiator and get some new coolant in this thing. Alright, now that you have completely drained your radiator and replaced your coolant reservoir, if you have a new one like I do, you're going to use distilled water and refill your radiator. I was gonna make a joke not to use distilled water that actually expires, because I didn't know that distilled water actually expires. That is an expiration date. And for an easy pour, I just poured it into this Coke bottle that I cut the top off of, and I'm using a milk bottle as a funnel. And once the water fills all the way up to the neck of the radiator, you're just going to want to turn the car on, and the system will self-bleed itself. As it self-bleeds, you're going to want to add more water to the system until the engine is hot enough that it has fully circulated the water. And while you're doing that, you want to have your heat turned all the way up. You just want to pay attention to your temperature gauge to make sure it doesn't spike. If the temperature suddenly goes up, that could indicate that you have an air bubble in your system. And if that's the case, you just need to fill up with more water. So we ended up running the engine for long enough to heat up the coolant and get it through the system. So we're going to jack up the car again and drain the water from the system so that we can add our new coolant. Alright guys, well, after about 6 coolant flushes, just kept running water through the system over and over again, we finally have it looking pretty clean enough for me at the moment, especially with a new radiator hopefully coming in the future. I'm just gonna have to flush it again, so I'm not too terribly concerned with that. But for our last step, we are going to add our final coolant mixture, and we're going to be using Mishimoto's Liquid Cool. Mishimoto is an automotive cooling company. They do radiators, they do coolant, they do hoses. They're just kind of all over the board whenever it comes to cooling for any application that you're looking at. So we have our mixing bottle right here, because this is full strength. We need to water this down with a ratio of 50% coolant and 50% distilled water. It is important that you use a distilled water, because a non-distilled water can cause corrosion in automotive applications after a certain period of time, and if you are not replacing your radiator like I will be in the future, that can be detrimental to your cooling performance. So, as you can see, I've marked the bottle at the halfway point, and we will just add half distilled water. And then we will add the other half of Mishimoto's Liquid Chill. Huh. Look at that. That is a very interesting color. I've actually never seen a blue coolant before. Alright guys, let's get this in the 240. Right, now that we've filled the system with our Mishimoto coolant, gonna get this plastic shroud back on, drop the car, take it out for a test drive, watch the temperature gauge, and if it doesn't spike to 1,000,000 degrees and I didn't do anything wrong, well, it looks like we've done a successful coolant change. Well, it's the next day after we got our coolant reservoir installed and put in our new Mishimoto liquid chill coolant. I apologize for a lot of the noise in the video this time around. I was actually working in my buddy's garage because it was heated, and you can actually hear the heater in the background throughout the entire video. I was unaware of that at the time, but I am the genius that wanted to start a car build during the winter, and I don't have an insulated garage, so thank you to Dave yet again, the guy who gave me the struts. He is letting me use his garage every once in a while to continue building the car so that I don't have to slum it out in this absolutely freezing garage. I guess for the last thing in the video, I'm going to put on this Mishimoto sticker just so that whenever I roll up to the Hot Boy car meets, they will know that this spicy KA24E is cooled by none other than the best. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thanks a ton for reaching the end of the video. It really helps me out when you guys watch the entire thing. If you'd like, get in contact with us over on Instagram at team.blush. It'll be on the screen right now for you guys to see. Not sure what we're going to be doing for our next video. I don't want to spoil anything, but I think it's going to be pretty big, and I think it's going to be happening pretty soon. So there shouldn't be too long of a wait for everyone. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot.